hashtag Twin Peaks Shooting, and then go ahead and use the hashtag Waco 170. Those are what are trending currently, so let's just keep it with that. But we'll be starting within the next 5 minutes or so. We're just kind of waiting to see if anybody is going to come in.
Sarah, could you stand in for just 1 second? We're trying to be in focus.
Better? And does anybody need me to spell Clendennen for you? It is in the complaint that you have. And then our firm handle name is at BMHS Legal. BNHS. Good. BNHS Legal. So Broden, Mickelson, Helms, and Snipes Legal.
All right, I want to thank you all for coming. My name is Clint Broden. I'm a partner in the Dallas law firm of Broden, Mickelson, Helms, and Snipes. The main reason we called this press conference this morning, and I appreciate y'all coming, or this afternoon on such short notice, is based on the press conference the police chief, Chief Stroman, gave on Friday, where he basically expressed absolutely no remorse or any feelings for the wrecked lives that the Waco Police Department caused by arresting 177 people at the Twin Peaks in a fill-in-the-name affidavit. Chief Stroman also tried to discount the stories of the bikers who are now being released from custody, basically saying, well, what else would they say? This is what we expect them to say. He shouldn't be permitted to keep trying to sell that story, because that's not what happened out there. The first few weeks or the first few days of the Twin Peaks shooting, we saw the collage of 177 mugshots. Whether these people were involved or innocent or what have you, press kept showing 177 mugshots. But it's important to see the many innocent people, pictures of the many innocent people who were arrested that day, the real pictures, and hear stories of their lives. There's Matt Clendennen, who is my client. Matt's here to my left with his family. He's 30 years old, 2011 Baylor graduate with a degree in business and finance, former firefighter. That's Matt's picture up there, a picture with his family. And until this incident, he was a business owner. And Matt will tell you a little bit about what this has caused him and how it's ruined his life. There are some other attorneys who are going to talk about Darrell Walker. And one of the reasons they're not here is Matt shared full custody of those children with his ex-wife, who is now, because of this incident, because of the claims that the Waco Police Department have made against Matt, went back to court to try to get full custody of those two children. So that's another way Matt has been hurt in all of this. I gave you all a packet, and I want to talk about what's in the packet. Most of them have probably of what you all have seen. But one of the most important things in the packet is this polygraph report from a polygraph, a well-respected polygrapher, and Mr. Holden, Rick Holden in Dallas, who asked Matt the key questions. Did you participate in the violence? Did you go there anticipating violence? Did you encourage violence? And Matt answered no to all of those questions. And Mr. Holden, based on his own examination as well as accepted standards from universities and the grade polygraphers, determined that Matt was telling the truth. Mr. Holden told me, both based on standards adopted by Johns Hopkins University, there's only less than a 1% chance that Matt answered these questions falsely when he answered no to all these questions. You also have in your packets an amended civil complaint. We have filed a lawsuit against Manuel Chavez, who filed the fill-in-the-name complaint without any regard as to whether there was individual probable cause to name some of these innocent individuals. Abelino Reyna, the DA, who went on KWTX television and talked about the fact that because he was keeping these people in jail because they were not cooperating in his mind, although Matt will tell you exactly what went on that day, and that he gave a full statement to the police that day. The city of Waco and McLennan County, and I got a couple of inquiries. We sent out the first press release, and I called it Clendennen County, and that was not intended joke that Mr. Clendennen is going to own McLennan County, but it was a typo in my press release. But McLennan County, and based on the press conference given by Chief Stroman on Friday, we will be adding his name to the complaint. It is obvious from his statements that the Waco police, and he leads the Waco police, are not properly trained to determine what probable cause is. The fact that he is still unapologetic for what happened gives some indication that the policymakers in the city of Waco have a long way to go in training their police officers properly. There is a judicial complaint I filed myself against Justice of the Peace Pete Peterson, who signed the $1 million bonds, and he said he signed them to send a message. That's a quote he gave to the Waco Tribune and a quote he gave to the LA Times. And Judge Snipes will talk in a minute about how one goes about properly setting bonds. There was a request we made on Friday that's included in your packet to the Department of Justice to determine whether civil rights violations occurred in this case. I suggest there were and are ongoing, since many of the people still remain in jail. And then one of my favorite things actually is I keep getting letters and emails from all around the country. I got just Saturday a letter from a 78-year-old woman in Dallas who talked about how she shook President Truman's hand many years ago, and how she's always been an adamant supporter of law enforcement, but she can't abide by what is happening in this case. I got a Facebook instant message from a woman who was totally unrelated, had nothing to do with motorcycles, was at Twin Peaks that day with her husband. She was detained that day. They took her phone, they took her purse, which contained her keys and her credit cards. She had to go, when they finally released her, she had to crawl through the window of her house in order to get in the house, and has had to hire an attorney just to get her credit cards and keys back from the Waco Police Department. So this has affected a whole bunch of people. When I'm done in a minute, Judge Michael Snipes will talk. Mike is a West Point graduate. He's a retired Army colonel. He was an assistant United States attorney for the Northern District of Texas for approximately 8 years. He was a assistant United States attorney for almost a decade. He was a state district judge for 8 years, was presiding over the Kaufman County murder cases where the DAs were involved. And he joined our firm in January. And I asked Mike to talk because of his law enforcement background, his prosecutorial background, his judicial background, and we often disagree on various issues about criminal justice. But I think this is one instance in particular where we come with one mind. With that said, I'm going to the plan is to let Mike talk to you. Then Matt will talk to you a little bit. He'll tell you how he got involved in motorcycling, the charity work the motorcycle club does, what happened at Twin Peaks that day, and the effect it's had on his life. We'll be available to answer any questions, and then the lawyers for some of these, the three gentlemen I talked to, they're going to talk to you about their particular clients. So I'll turn it over to Mike, and then, as I said, Matt will talk a little bit and answer some questions.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for being here. My name is Mike Snipes. I am a partner along with Clint, and we represent Mr. Clendennen. As Clint mentioned, I do have 39 years in public service in this great country. Generally speaking, I'm extremely pro-law enforcement, pro-military, very, very proud of our great country, and have served it, I hope, with some degree of honor and duty for the last 39 years. But having served as a judge and looked at the facts of this case and compared it to the law, there are just some things that are wrong in this case. We start with the amount of bond that was set, $1 million in each one of these cases. That's far too excessive. Bond is not designed to oppress individuals. It's set so that we can make reasonable assurances that the defendant that's charged will appear in court and to keep the community safe. It's not supposed to be meant to send a message, as this Justice of the Peace indicated. In addition, the arrest warrants in this case should have had individualized probable cause. There are very, very serious problems with that in this case. For one thing, the types of warrants that were used in these cases are what are called fill-in-the-blank warrants. That is, the only thing that was individualized in these warrants in these cases was the names of the various defendants. The rest of the probable cause is exactly the same. And if you look at that logically, that doesn't make a lot of sense. In fact, a lot of the courts in Texas have strongly criticized the use of fill-in-the-blank forms, and several cases, such as the Larson case and the Faulkner case, have specifically said that. Another thing that's wrong with these warrants, it's not illegal per se to have a Justice of the Peace sign an arrest warrant. However, that does lead to certain red flags. And what do I mean by that? Justices of the Peace do not have to be lawyers, and the one that signed these warrants was not. So, how would you expect a layman to be able to evaluate probable cause, a very, very serious legal standard, in a way that a lawyer could? Well, you wouldn't. So there's many, many red flags in this case. I suggest that the Department of Justice get involved in this case. I was a federal prosecutor for many years, very proud to have been in the department. They've got the kind of professionals that are needed to come down here and straighten this case out and to give some assistance. I thank you again for being here. I believe in Matt Clendennen and his cause, and he will speak to you now.
So what I was going to do is just kind of start from the beginning, give you a little history of myself, how I became to be a member with a motorcycle club, and also kind of what I saw and heard and so forth of the events that took place on May the 17th at Twin Peaks. When I first started looking into becoming a member with the Scimitars Motorcycle Club, one of the first things that I did was what so many people do these days is I pulled up on the internet and searched the name. I was looking for any kind of news one way or another that would represent them or give me any kind of insight into their history. I had absolutely no luck finding anything. The only thing I found was pictures on the internet that were associated with an actual scimitar, which is some form of a Russian military sword of some kind. Not really sure exactly. But absolutely nothing to do with the motorcycle club that I became a member of. What I was drawn to by this club was the fact that every person that I had talked to was a hardworking individual, supported their families, were actively involved in charity events, and in giving back to the community. The thing that drew to me the most was, being able to be a part of something like that, being able to ride with these guys. I mean, I enjoy riding motorcycles, and that's what it was all about to me, was being able to get out there on two wheels, hit the road, and just kind of enjoy the friendships and the brotherhood, so to speak, of the people that I was with. So when it comes down to my reasonings behind becoming a member of this was for that. I looked for that friendship, the getting together with people that enjoyed the same things that I do, as well as the opportunity to get involved in the community. There's been events where we have brought in families in need at Christmas time. We've put on large dinner for them. They came in, we had bought presents. There was we'd have a Santa Claus come riding in on a motorcycle and sit in a big Santa chair, and they were given individualized homemade stockings with their names on them. I mean, the whole event was to give these kids something that they didn't have the opportunity to have without our help. And those were the kind of things that I really looked forward to and things I really enjoyed. On the day of May 17th at Twin Peaks, I had arrived at Twin Peaks, parked in the parking lot on the side, right outside the patio area. Made my way in through the restaurant and was seated on the patio. I had ordered a water. I was sitting with a couple of other guys that I had ridden up there with at the same table, and we were still sitting there waiting to order some food. We heard a large group of bikes pulling in at one time. This wasn't uncommon. It was there had been bikes rolling into the parking lot the entire time we were there. There was a large group pulled into the parking lot. They pulled up directly in front of the bikes where we had parked, and there was some sort of a commotion that kind of came about. At that time is when I saw kind of everybody kind of grouped together out in the parking lot. There was you could hear a little bit of a verbal argument, and a very short period of time after that, which seemed like maybe a minute or two, was when I heard the first gunshot. I did not see the gun. I did not see who held the gun or who fired the shot. I just heard it. And I'm sure, as any other common person, when you're out in a public place and all of a sudden you hear a gunshot, you kind of freak out a little bit. I kind of temporarily froze a little bit just in the sheer shock and trying to kind of wrap my head around what it was. Almost immediately it was followed by another gunshot, at which time I was trying to make my way through the patio to a side door there that went into the restaurant. Made my way through that door. Almost immediately inside that door is a little hallway on the right. I tucked around behind that hallway and waited there in that area for, it seemed like forever. Constantly hearing gunfire, kind of, fearful for, what could happen next. What is something going to come around that corner? Short period of time after that was when the law enforcement made their way through the front door. They ordered everybody to the ground. Everybody in the restaurant then kind of just laid out, put their hands out in front of them, and laid there until they asked for everybody to get up and make their way out the front door. They marched us out the front door, around the side of the building, walked us kind of right through the middle of the area where everything had occurred. I walked by several bodies laid on the ground, and then made my way back to the back of the restaurant, where at that time they lined us up and searched us. After they had searched us, they had us sit down in the parking lot. We stayed there in that parking lot for several hours. At that time, we were told on a number of occasions that they were going to transport us to, as they said, a secure facility, take our statements, and then we would be released. We could have somebody come and pick us up. So at that time, I was understanding the fact that I was going to be there for a while, but that I should have been, I should be able to make a call and get somebody to pick me up that night, and after I had made my statement, and be able to go home to my family. It wasn't until the next day, after they had kept us in our little zip tie handcuffs the entire time we were at the convention center, overnight. Many people were having to find a way to sleep with their hands tied behind their backs. We had to basically just try to come up with any way we could to get comfortable in such an uncomfortable position. They then, the next day, after they had gone through and pulled every person out individually and questioned us and took our statements, put us back in the room again, and then the next day is when they kind of gathered us all into another bus and sent us then over to the Highway 6 jail. Went through a very long booking process there, but with the 177 people that they were trying to process through there, it wasn't until probably around 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning that we were finally put into an area where we had a bed and somewhere to sleep. Spent then another, a good over 2 weeks locked up in that facility, and was, given no statements given to us as to, what the deal was, as far as other than we were told we were being arrested for probable cause. Backtrack just a little bit. During the booking process, we were initially taken through the booking at the Highway 6 jail. Then they transferred us, walked us across the parking lot to the Jack Harwell Detention Center, where we went through another booking process there. It was at that time when we were in a holding cell with another probably 20 to 30 people that the magistrate came in, and in a large group of us standing there, he told us that we were all being charged with engaging in organized criminal activity, and that all of our bonds were being set at $1 million. It was total shock. Just the thought of You know, what reason is there for it? You know, I mean, it made no sense. From there, like I said, spending a good over 2 weeks in jail, trying to just go through in my head, you know, what's going to happen. You know, why am I still here? Why is there not some resemblance of justice here, you know, for the innocent? You know, I mean, I was nothing more than a witness that day, which I didn't really even witness anything. You know, I heard gunshots, I saw a verbal altercation, but beyond that, I mean, I was just there. The only thing I can think of is in their eyes, and that the law enforcement eyes, that me being there is their probable cause, and it didn't make any sense to me. So it took over 2 weeks before my attorney Clint was able to work out a reduction in my bond. It was reduced to $100,000, which without the help of my family, I still would have never been able to make that. You know, there was a lot of guys that were in there that you know, it would make the same comments of if, you know, they had heard of bonds being reduced to $250,000 to $100,000, and you know, they would all make the same comments of there's no way they can come up with that kind of cash in order to bond out. You know, even only having to pay you know, at least 10%. There was just no way. Luckily, you know, I had a family that was able to pull together and get the funds for me to get out. And you know, and now it's an everyday battle. I do run a landscaping franchise and have spent my entire life I've spent a long time developing sorry. I've spent a long time putting together a reputation. And then to see how easily such carelessness
closed off in 6th grade. Okay.
Naked even.
So to see how quickly such a careless response from all aspects of the justice system here, and how quickly it can ruin something. How quickly it can ruin something that you work so hard for. I know that we're supposed to believe in our justice system, and that it's supposed to operate in a way that protects us, and also a way of innocent until proven guilty. And it's it seems very obvious here that the approach they've taken is the exact opposite. They've taken a guilty until proven innocent, and the whole response to everything, and the negative effects that it's had on my personal life, on my professional life. It's been overwhelming. I know that there's still a long road ahead, but I just hope that by being here and putting this out there, that the public can understand that there was injustice done here, and that somebody needs to be held responsible for this. Somebody needs to be held accountable for this. And I know it's a long road ahead, but I do believe that in the end the justice system will prevail, and that the truth will come out, and eventually maybe we'll get lucky, and some of the law enforcement involved will finally admit the fact that they did something wrong, and maybe that we'll see some resemblance of heart here, and maybe they'll finally admit some remorse or regret. But until that happens, it's every day is a struggle. Every day is a challenge. That's all I've got right now. So.
Let y'all ask Matt any questions. He'll be available after the fact too. If you want to ask me any questions, Joe Snipes is still available, and after that we'll let the other lawyers for the other clients speak.
Now, real quick, I think a first question people will wonder is, why were you there that day? So can you sort of elaborate on that?
I was there that day for the same reason I go anywhere when I'm riding a motorcycle. I was going to hang out with friends, to ride my bike, and just to enjoy what I enjoy doing. I enjoy being part of a motorcycle club, and in the fact of getting together with friends and being able to hang out and have a good time. I was aware that there was a COC meeting being held that day. It wasn't the first COC meeting that I had been to. I had been to a number of them in the past, and they were always very peaceful. It was usually pretty boring. It was just legal stuff. They were talking about motorcycle rights and trying to push for a lot of the things that you see out there with the share the road stuff. I mean, it was always a very peaceful event. So, I mean, yes, I was aware that was going on, and didn't think twice about it. Thought it would be a good time to get together with friends and hang out and see what they had to say.
Did you know that the Cossacks and Banditos are going to be there? I mean, this is a pretty tough crowd, given that you're responsible for your family's finances. Why put yourself in a situation?
Because I never anticipated anything like this to happen. I mean, if I were to say that I was never going to go somewhere where something might happen to put my family at risk, I'd never leave my house. I couldn't drive to the grocery store because I would fear that I might have a wreck and not be able to support my family. I mean, I can't live day to day, and with the fear of every time I step out the door, I might not be able to provide for my family.
But what about the Cossacks and the Banditos? Did you know they were going to be there?
It was a COC meeting. I mean, you got clubs from all over the state that are going to be there.
COC
I mean, it was-
is all clubs?
Yeah, it's I believe it stands for the Confederation of Clubs. I mean, that's what it is. Like I said, I've been to a number of them in the past. There's never been any issue. So I had no reason to believe that there was going to be any issue there that day.
Did you know there was going to be did you know there was bad blood between the Cossacks and Banditos? Or is there bad blood?
I mean, I've never been a part of any of it or been involved in any of it. So like I said, I had no reason to believe there was going to be anything that day as well.
Matt, did y'all spend most of your time at the Jack Harwell Detention Center or at the county lockup?
We spent our time at the Jack Harwell Detention Center because we were told that the Highway 6 facility was full, I guess, unable to accommodate all of us, but that we were supposedly being still considered Highway 6 inmates, I guess you would say.
Much better.
Yeah.
Were you and the other motorcyclists, when you were being held, were you separated, or was everybody in one?
They separated everybody out according to, I mean, it was complete segregation so that they didn't have any of the opposing, the conflicting people in the same area.
And did you hear while you were being held, did you hear any animosity towards other bikers, or were people saying anything like that?
The only thing that people were talking about when I was in there was how messed up the fact that we were all being locked up was, and how these people were going to try to come up with money to get out of jail, and how they were going to come up with money to pay an attorney in order to get justice for the fact that they didn't do anything wrong. So, I mean, that was all that we ever talked about.
Would you say a majority of the bikers that you were in jail with are completely innocent?
Absolutely.
And you were there 16 days?
Yeah, 16, 17. I got out on a Tuesday, so whichever day that was.
Did you have any
Kind of lose
weapons
track
on you?
of it.
Did you have any weapons on you that day?
I did not. The only thing I had with me that day was a small miniature pocket knife that I carried in my pocket everywhere I went. I mean, I'm a guy, I'm a landscaper. What guys don't carry a little pocket knife?
Did you know that the other people had weapons?
I did not, no.
Matt, did they do an intake on you folks to find out if you were employed, that you have a stable residential history and ties to the community? Were there any intake done, any identification of that nature done on y'all when you were booked in?
Not that I know of. All I remember of that stuff was getting my picture taken. Seemed like every time I turned around, and fingerprints, and stuck in a really hideous-looking jumpsuit.
We thank you, House.
When you were wearing scimitar paraphernalia that day, is that
Yes.
right? Did you have anything on you that supported Cossacks as well?
We wore a patch on the front of us that says has a Cossack insignia on it. Yes.
Have you had a chance to watch the press conferences that were done immediately afterwards? And if so, do you have any comments on what was said there?
I did see a lot of the stuff that was initially being released. It was frustrating. It was aggravating to listen to the law enforcement to just collectively identify every person as this, I think his wording at the time was a vicious gang member. I'm by no means a vicious anything. Listening to him constantly, supporting his belief that they had probable cause to arrest the 177 people was frustrating. The total lack of any type of understanding that the large majority of the people that were there that day had absolutely nothing to do with what happened.
Now, the Waco police had 16 officers in the parking lot. Did you or anybody else see those police? Did you have any idea that there were police on the perimeter of the building?
Whenever I pulled in, I was following behind another motorcycle in front of me. And if you've ever ridden a bike, a lot of times when you're not out in front, the first thing you're doing is watching that tire in front of you so you don't run over them, especially in a parking lot. So was I aware of law enforcement in the back part of the parking lot? I never saw anybody back there. You hear the collective hearsay, I guess, of that there was a bunch in the back of the parking lot, but I never personally saw them, no.
But that came up before the shooting started, before talking that other people had maybe seen police, or?
At this point, I couldn't tell you when I heard it.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if the police had a visible presence. They've said varying things about that.
I've heard recent claims that they had a very visual presence, but it couldn't have been that visual. I didn't see them. So but like I said, I'm watching a tire in front of me, so I'm not watching out for what law enforcement's in the parking lot. It's just not something I really pay attention to.
What was your knowledge of the banditos and the Cossacks before you went there that day?
As far as the knowledge of the banditos is probably like anybody else who has access to a computer and watches TV. You hear of things that they've been associated with, or things that they've been accused of, but I have no firsthand knowledge or experience with dealing with them.
Did you ever have concerns about wearing something that has a Cossack insignia on it and knowing that disagreement, however much knowledge you had about it exists?
No, not at all.
Can you describe the relationship between the scimitars and the Cossacks?
We basically what it is we're all we like to get together and we hold these events together as far as like the charity events. The one I was speaking of at Christmas time is actually called Cossacks Caring for Kids. It's been an event that's been going on for several years now in Waco. As far as the associations that we have together, that's basically what it is. Whenever we have big get-togethers, we're all there.
Who's the hierarchy?
I'm sorry?
Who is the hierarchy? The president, the chaplain?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Like who?
Who's over everybody? The club.
The scimitars are a separate club altogether. So we have, within our chapter, we have organizations just like business do, just like any other organization does. And the Cossacks have the same. So they're, everybody has their own.
Were they there that day?
Was who there?
I'm a little confused. Sorry.
I think I am too.
Is there like a president to the club, or?
There are lots of chapters. There's a lot of chapters of scimitars. There's a lot of chapters of Cossacks. There's a lot of chapters of all of these clubs. And each chapter has their own organization and their own, I guess as you called it, hierarchy. And were there other presidents there? I'm sure there were. There was 177 people arrested, so obviously you're going to have some form of hierarchy there. But I couldn't tell you, outside of my individual chapter, I couldn't tell you anything beyond that.
Your chapter was 4 people?
Yes.
Can you talk about has affected your business?
That kind of goes back to the where I kind of lost it there, as far as, you know, the service industry, which is what I'm in landscaping and maintenance, is it's a very personal relationship. It's a very reputation based type of business, and when you talk about dealing with homeowners and things, you know, you build a relationship with these people, and you know, my people that I have worked with in the past and done work for have all been very supportive of me through this. The negative side of the whole situation is where our primary business comes into play, and that's with commercial contracts. We rely very heavily on my image and my reputation whenever I go in to talk to a new potential commercial client, customer. And just like with everything else you do, the first thing you're going to do is Google the name. And I'm the person that they associate with my company, and so they're going to Google my name. And so right now, when you Google my name, it's very easy to see that the only thing that pops up is all of this negative charges that have been thrown at me, and mug shots all over the place, you know, and police reports identifying me as a vicious gang member. And I mean, there's no way to be able to justify the fact that why would you hire me? You know, and I rely very heavily on that business. And so right now, with the fact that, you know, I can't really go out there and grow my business, and if I don't grow, I fail, and that's just the way it is. And so, you know, that's kind of what it put us into a situation of we don't know how long this is going to take. You know, how long is it going to take to clear my name? And even when it is cleared, you're still going to see mugshots when you Google my name. So the amount of damage that has been done to my personal character and my image, you know, it's immeasurable at this time.
I know owning a company such as yours, you develop a lot of close-knit relationships with people already. Have you received any feedback from some of your customers?
Like I said, I've received nothing but support from customers that know about the situation. I've had countless customers that have contacted me saying if they can do anything to help, let them know. I even had some customers, you know, that made the comments that they were ready to come bail me out themselves because they didn't like seeing me in jail, and you know, and they wanted me back. They wanted me back to work. So I mean, but like I said, at this point, as far as our personal relationships with those individual customers, it's been very supportive. But again, no, we have not had any loss of current customers. But again, that's where I really want to reinforce the fact that the damage done here is on the reputation of growing. And in a service industry business, you can't survive off of maintaining. You got to grow, and there's no way to determine what the long range effects are going to be of this.
And just to be clear, you say you've been to COC meetings before. How many times? A couple?
I couldn't give you a number. Yeah, it's been several years since I attended.
But you had no reason whatsoever to think. Nobody there did. A COC meeting, as I understand, has never been violent.
Absolutely not.
Ever.
Right.
And so you had no reason whatsoever to think that anything like what happened would happen at that meeting, correct?
No, not at all. Like I said, I mean, had I ever thought that something like that would have happened, I would have never been there.
Did they talk about pending legislation at the meeting? Or had they gotten that far?
They never even got to start the meeting.
Was that on the agenda?
I never saw the agenda. So I mean, that's the COC in general is pending pending
So
legislation.
Any political considerations were completely canceled out by the.
It never made it to any form of meetings or discussion. So.
What do you want viewers at home to take away from this?
I want them to understand that there's wrongdoing here on part of the legal system. there is a very large amount of injustice here. I mean, there are still people in jail now that have no reason or right to be there. And you know, and they may have had their bonds reduced, but again, like I said, there's so many of them there that they're sole providers and they haven't been working now for a month. You know, how do they come up with the funds for this stuff? I mean, I want people to understand that there needs to be action here. There needs to be accountability here for this, you know, injustice, and somebody needs to be held responsible. And I would really like to see, you know, some form of remorse for what was done wrong, and rather than just the blatant disregard for it.
Has this changed your thoughts on our criminal justice system going through something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went through school. You know, I took business law classes at school. You know, and studied the criminal justice system from just a broad perspective and part of my education. And you know, I've always heard of the occasional, you know, obviously somebody being wrongly accused, wrongly convicted, you know, but always on more of a small scale. I mean, I just don't understand how you can have such a large number of people all at the same time facing the same problem. You know, I think the justice system is temporarily, in this case, messed up. But I do think in the long run, you know, there will be some form of justice come back, I guess you could say.
Can you talk a little bit about the conditions of your bond specifically? Have they put any hindrance on your ability to work or live?
Absolutely. My wife and I have been, for the last couple of years, been pursuing actually relocating out of McLennan County. And in recent months, we've really moved forward with that. We've gone as far as looking at houses, and my wife owns some property outside of the county, and it's only 45 minutes from here. And we were trying, actually this summer, our goal was to relocate and be able to get our kids started in a different school district. And one of the restrictions I have right now is I can't leave the county. So obviously, I can't move. Another thing that has caused problem for is part of my business, being a franchise, one of the things that you do is you have a territory. You have an area that is part of your business, and being limited to McLennan County restricts me from being able to reach my entire area of my business, which does include parts of surrounding counties. Another problem that it has caused is I have a 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew, and one of the aspects of my business is doing outdoor landscape lighting. It's nighttime lighting. It's a little hard to adjust and fine-tune lights outside in the dark when you can't be there after dark. So it's really created a strain on that aspect of my business as well.
And I will say our plan was to have some of these other innocent people here today, but because of the restrictions, Matt's house, I think, is down that way. This is his parents' house, and they wouldn't be able to drive down the street because they'd be inside of their house. That's why the lawyers are here to talk on behalf of some other clients, because these conditions won't even allow them to pass in the sight line of Matt's house, his church, or his
Place of
children's
business
schools.
or schools or anything.
Can I ask, you heard the shot, what it sounded like, and, I mean, did you hear other shots after that, and what they sounded like?
I mean, it sounded like a gunshot. I'm no gun expert by any means, so it sounded like a gunshot that came from not very far away. And then, I mean, from then inside, I could still continue to hear constant gunshots.
Did you know any of the people that died?
Yes, I did. When they marched us out the front door and around the side. There was one I saw laid down in between some of the bikes. That he was actually one of my a mechanic that had worked on some of my vehicles for my company. I had actually spent some time with him the Friday before that happened, working on one of my trucks. Been working on it all day long, and he was one of the ones that was killed.
They had y'all handcuffed for 20 hours or more. Did they bother to take the handcuffs off you when you needed to go to the bathroom or get a bite to eat? Or?
When they took us to the bathroom, they would they wouldn't actually take them off altogether, but they would I guess just cut in between them and then allow you to go to the bathroom and then immediately put them back on you. When we ate, they gave us, finally gave us some little peanuts and some chips and stuff. No, they didn't take them off.
How'd you feed yourself with your hands back here?
We didn't really feed ourselves too well. We fed the person next to us.
Understood.
So,
Yeah, the Waco authorities seem to have really sort of circled the wagons on this. Been very stingy with information. They haven't really released, for instance, how many people were killed by the police. Do you think that state officials, like the governor, the attorney general, might need to get involved in this?
absolutely. I think the truth of it needs to come out. I think the public needs to know how many people were killed by law enforcement and how many people were killed by other people that were there. I mean, in my opinion, if you're going to arrest 177 people and you've got nine bodies on the ground, how many of those people were actually killed as a result of the incident? How many people were killed by the police? Absolutely, I believe that needs to be brought out. And I think somebody needs to step in and that needs to be released. I keep hearing that the ballistics aren't back or the investigation portion of that isn't back and that it will be released, but not until the ongoing investigation.
Were any of the bikers there aware that if you're locked up in Jack Harwell Detention Center, the taxpayers of Clendennen County are paying $45.50 per day per prisoner, and they are paying that to the Lazal Corrections? And
we saw something on the news at one time where they had stated that I think it was after having been there for like 8 or 9 days that it had already cost, just for the housing, it already cost like $60,000 or $70,000 to the taxpayers just for a few days. So I mean, yeah, we had heard things and seen stuff like that on the news, and it's just more fuel for the fire of why are there so many people locked up that don't need to be.
Did you hear the police chief speak on Friday?
I watched the recording of it.
What was your immediate reaction?
It was frustrating. It was kind of the whole thing was kind of a joke. I mean, why? What did he need to go on onto a press a press conference and do nothing more than say, it was in the release. Read the release. And then when he was asked if he has any remorse or regrets, for the innocents that were and are still being held in the jail, he showed none at all. He continued to back up his thought of we had probable cause to do this, and that's what we're going to do. I mean, it was just frustration.
Matt's going to stay around to ask some other questions, but Matt makes a very compelling person. It's a pleasure for me because, quite frankly, criminal defense attorneys don't always get clients like Matt, and it's certainly been my privilege to represent him through this. But Matt is one of several. Let me, if I can come in. There are other people exactly like Matt who are suffering through this, and I wanted to give their lawyers a chance to talk to you a little bit about their clients. And as I said, Matt will stick around. I'll be around. We can answer questions. We can do one-on-one interviews. But Rick Rousseau represents the two military gentlemen I showed you before, and I know he wanted to talk to you a little bit.
I'll just be very brief. My name is attorney Rick Rousseau, Rousseau. and I'm a former military attorney for 27 years. I had been the staff judge advocate at Fort Hood twice, and my partner that also represents these individuals, Darrell Walker and Rolando Reyes, is former District Court Judge Susan Criss, who was a District Court Judge in Galveston for over 13 years, and we've both been working on these cases for the last several weeks. Just a few brief points I wanted to make about both Rolando Reyes and former Master Sergeant Darrell Walker. Darrell Walker was a military police officer for over 20 years. He served his country both in peace and he served in combat in Afghanistan twice, where, as was mentioned before, he received 2 Bronze Stars medals and also a Navy Marine Corps medal for helping to evacuate casualties during a mass casualty event in Kunar province in Afghanistan. His wife is also a former military police officer. Both my clients drove, Darrell Walker and Rolando Reyes drove from the Clendennen Fort Hood area for the council meeting that day. Weather was a little bit worse down in Bell County than up here on that day, and there was a chance of rain down there. So these individuals are such hardcore bikers, they decided to ride in a car to Twin Peaks because they didn't want to get wet on the way up to Waco. They had arrived at Twin Peaks approximately 10 minutes before this incident took place. They were nowhere near where the shooting took place. They complied with every instruction that they were given by police officers, cooperated with them, and just like you heard from Matt here a few minutes ago, they were taken into custody, very similar story. And they've had to go through the exact same thing. And I think for these individuals that serve their country, and Rolando Reyes, as was mentioned, deployed to Iraq where he was injured in IED blast and medically retired from the military. This really has been a tremendous injustice to them. One thing I guess I did want to kind of mention here is that there's been a lot of talk in the media and with law enforcement individuals, district attorney's office, regarding individuals belonging to clubs. And these 2 individuals belong to a small motorcycle club in the Clendennen Fort Hood area. And a lot of times you hear the talk that some motorcycle groups belong to the 1%ers. These individuals are certainly 1%ers. They're the 1% that held up their hand and served their country to defend the Constitution. And what they're getting in return here is clearly an injustice for something that they didn't do, nothing more than being a witness, and really a witness that didn't see anything take place at Twin Peaks that day. So I apologize that they're not here with you today. They have both bonded out. Luckily, when we presented information on these 2 individuals regarding their military background, their disabilities that were verified through documents from the VA, their bonds were both reduced to $25,000, and they both were able to bond out of jail. So they're back home with their families right now, but many other individuals are not. So I don't want to take up any more time. Obviously, I can't tell you exactly what they would say, but if you have some general questions, I'll be glad to answer a couple of questions.
Can I have a contact number for you?
Sure. 254-699-9999. And that's our Harker Heights office for our law firm.
Were you at the meeting with the 2 district judges where the proffer of a hold harmless agreement was put on the table, Mr. Jarrett?
Yes.
Rejected it? Could you speak to us about that?
Yeah, my partner, former Judge Susan Criss, and I were in the judges' chambers with the district attorney, Jarrett. Basically, there was another attorney there, Mr. Looney, that had raised up this issue regarding allegations of signing a document early on for individuals to get out, that they would hold the police harmless and not sue them, that they would be released on bond. Mr. Looney brought this allegation forward. My partner and I just happened to be in the judge's chamber during that event. The district attorney, Jarrett, took out his cell phone and said that he had received text messages that Sunday afternoon from the attorney that had supposedly made this or brought this waiver up. To be honest with you, I can't remember her name right now. And he said that when he received the text messages from this particular attorney, that he had informed her that it's not proper and that he wouldn't go along with it. And that was more or less the end of the matter. Obviously, from our perspective, along with Mr. Looney, we did have we represent 4 individuals. We had one of our individuals that was approached regarding one of these waivers while they were in the county jail. So it was of concern to us as well as Mr. Looney.
Approached by whom, sir?
Pardon?
Approached by whom?
Unclear on that. We're unclear who it was that had approached him, whether it was somebody from the jail or another attorney, but obviously because our clients had been represented for approximately a week at that time, we were concerned that our clients were being approached in this manner, or at least one of them. So, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
One thing I did neglect to mention, we had asked the magistrate judge to hold an examining trial in this case to determine whether there was probable cause. We asked him to do that either the very end of May or the beginning of June. He talked to the DA's office ex parte, which is prohibited by judicial canons of ethics, and set it for August 10th. We've asked him to move that up, and we have not heard back from him. I heard the administrative judge make a comment that this is sort of like 3 buses pulling up to a fast food restaurant, and you need to serve everybody. And I will say, when you pull up to In-N-Out Burger with 3 buses, they work hard to get you served. They stay up late, they keep the place open. They don't say, come back in a month and we'll serve you then. I think that's a lot what's happening here. But with that said, because I neglected, I want to let y'all hear from the attorney of this Marine and hear what's happened to his clients.
Afternoon. My name is Brian Buffard, B-R-I-A-N. Last name is B-O-U-F-F-A-R-D. I represent Jorge Salinas, S-A-L-I-N-A-S. I offer you this picture to show you who he is because, unlike what's been portrayed by the district attorney's office and by the police department, this is not a thug, okay? And this is not a criminal. This is a young man who served his country, was honorably discharged. He did 2 tours in Afghanistan. He earned the Combat Action Ribbon, the Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, and other awards and decorations. And the extent of his, if you want to call it criminal activity that night, was sitting in Twin Peaks eating a hamburger and then following all of law enforcement's instructions to get down on the ground and put your hands on your head. For that, in Clendennen County, you get a first-degree felony charge and $1 million bond. And I wish that Jorge, he goes by Bubba, so I wish that Bubba could be here today so you could meet him. He can't be here because he's still in the Harwell Detention Center. He's still in there on $1 million bond. So we have a bond hearing in his case set for July 10th, and it's certainly my hope that justice is done.
Is he part of a biker club?
He is. He is part of a small Cossacks chapter out of Bell County, about 4 or 5 people in that chapter. And I echo what Mr. Clendennen was saying. I mean, that's what they were doing. They were going to a meeting. There was no expectation of violence, at least not on Bubba's part, and certainly not on the other folks that you've heard from.
A lot of people I interviewed afterward said birds of a feather flock together. They go and you hang with the Crips and the Bloods, you gotta know something's gonna go down. You go hang out with the Banditos and the Cossacks, you gotta know something's gonna go down. I mean, the possibility is, it's probable that something's gonna go down. You put yourself in harm's way.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would say to that is we live in a country that has freedom of association. You know, you can join clubs, you can do things. If you're going to be arrested and charged with a crime, the minimum that is necessary is for the police to be able to show probable cause that you, not just a member of a group, but you personally did something. And they cannot do that in this case, and they cannot do it in their cases. And I suspect at the end of the day, they will not be able to do it.
Is freedom of association covered by First Amendment, Mr. Buffalo?
Absolutely it is. We're talking about the highest law of the land. And I'd like to say, just one other thing about this bond situation. If you look at the Constitution and if you look at the Texas Constitution, you will not find in there a factor for bond setting of sending a message. Okay? And you will not find a factor that says, well, these people were from out of town. There's no legal justification to abuse people from out of town by setting bonds. So what I would say to everybody, and I say it till I'm blue in the face just in my private life, is learn who your candidates are when you vote. If you don't think it's a good idea to vote for a non-lawyer to be justice of the peace, well, vote for somebody else.
Can you spell your last name again, Brian?
Yes, ma'am. It's Bouffard. I'm a lawyer in Fort Worth. I'm appointed on this case. I've not been hired in Bubba's case. Several of us from surrounding counties, a lot of us in Fort Worth, several in Dallas, and some of the other counties have stood up and said, yeah, we'll come here and help, because McLennan County just doesn't have the size of a defense bar that it needs to handle 170 wrongfully arrested people. So,
You think all 70 are wrongfully?
well, no, I'm not saying that all 170 are completely innocent, because apparently some criminal activity took place. And again, I haven't seen the evidence yet because that hadn't been provided to us. But you do the investigation and you arrest those people. Or maybe you set reasonable bonds, let everybody out, and then raise the bonds on people who you investigate and find committed actual crimes. That's the way it's done, and that's the way it wasn't done in this case.
Will that be part of your pleadings when you go before the probable cause hearing to ask them to show cause as to probable cause, and to plead with the judge that if he does not see probable cause to set your bond at the maximum of $25,000, that's section 14.033 Code of Criminal Procedure. Will that be part of your pleading, sir?
Well, sure. And let's face it, if there's no probable cause, they shouldn't have been arrested in the first place. They ought to be released and given an apology.
We thank you, Hose.
Yes, sir.
In your experience as a criminal attorney, how often do you see $1 million bonds, and what crimes have you seen them for before?
I've never in my career, I've been doing this for 18 years, I've never seen $1 million bond. I have seen cases of no bond, and sometimes a no bond is appropriate depending on the allegations and the level of proof, but I never in my career have seen anything quite like what we're seeing right now here in Waco. Thank you very much.
If anybody has any quick questions for Matt, but I promised him one-on-one, and I want to have time for y'all to make your deadline, so any very quick questions?
I just asked Clint, how often have you seen $1 million bond?
I have been doing this since, let's see, I just went to my 25th law school reunion, so 25 years. I've never seen $1 million bond. I've represented several murder defendants who have their bond set where they've actually pretty much been caught with the smoking gun in their hand, so to speak, at $500,000. I've never seen anything at all, even half, well, I guess half, $500,000. Have any quick questions for me or Matt, and then we can do some of the individuals? All right, I really appreciate y'all coming. I just, as I said, I think that Waco police are trying to sell a story here that's simply not true, and I wanted you all to have an opportunity to meet Matt, hear about some of these others, but, the list can go on. I mean, I agree with the other attorneys. There were obviously guilty people here. There were 9 people killed. Who they were killed by, we're not hearing, but there were some people who are guilty, but a large majority of them, and Matt Clendennen included, are not among them. Thank you all.